When many think of Cyclops, they think of the X-Men. They think of a mutant with a visor who appears to fire lasers out of his eyes. But they're not lasers, they're optic blasts. We nerds scream in frustration. Cyclops is one of the oldest X-Men around, actually. He made his comic book debut alongside the other original members of his team in 1963 in X-Men Volume 1 Issue 1. And he was created by two of the Marvel greats, Jack Kirby and Stan Lee. He is known for often being a strongly disciplined team leader, Professor Xavier's golden boy and right-hand man in many matters. He is almost like a son to. But what don't we know about him? Well, with a character like Cyclops who has been around since 1963, there's a lot to know because there's a lot of comic book history. While you may think you have an idea of who he is from pop culture or movies, the truth is he has accomplished more than you could imagine in the Marvel Universe due to his various abilities and powers. Today we'll be looking at some of those abilities as we count down the top 10 superpowers you never knew Cyclops had. If you love Cyclops and the X-Men as much as we do, be sure to give this list a thumbs up. And be sure to stick around until the end of this list where I will have some bonus content coming your way. Alright, let's get counting. Number 10. Leadership. While he might not be the leader we'd all like for the X-Men, Scott Summers is more often the one that his fellow mutants need. Professor Xavier actually trained Cyclops for the role since day one as a young mutant who had been there since the beginning. So when people ask if he deserves to be a leader, the answer should be an emphatic yes, as he has been training for this role pretty much his entire life. A master tactician, Cyclops usually has his eyes on the bigger picture when it comes to problem solving, meaning sometimes, in order to achieve something good, he can be willing to do something that other heroes might deem as bad or downright dastardly. He kills people. He remade X-Force into a team of child assassins. He became a martyr on purpose, sacrificing himself because he knew the younger mutants needed someone to become their symbol to rally around. So, while we may not always approve of his actions, the bottom line is Cyclops is still one of the best when it comes to prime leaders in the Marvel Universe. While a very different character, he's on like a Captain America level of leadership. And that's like people universally agree to that, so not making that up. I know you're all thinking it. Number 9. Blast immunity. Due to the fact that they share genes and similar powers, Cyclops has blast immunity when it comes to his brother Havoc's blasts. His brother can devastate and obliterate anything he locks onto with his own shockwave-like blasts, which are emitted from his body, often more specifically his hands. Well, that is unless he targets Scott. Alex himself likewise has immunity to Scott's optic blast as well. Well, usually anyways. And to be clear, they can still attack one another, but the damage is simply negligible. It can be easily shrugged off due to their built-up immunity to each other. And when it comes to his own blast, Scott is completely immune. That's how he still manages to have eyelids and can even prevent his eyes from emitting optic blasts when they are closed shut, though he does still often have to sleep with his ruby quartz visor to be safe. I always like to imagine him with like a ruby quartz like eye mask. I think that would be super cute. Probably never gonna see that in the comics though, might be too cute for Scott. Not for me though. Number 8. Energy blasts. While many get triggered when I use the term laser eyes in videos, the reality is I do it to poke loving fun at the inconsistency of Scott Summers' powers. It's part of his comic book history. We may refer to the energy he emits from his eyes as optic blasts now, but the truth is optic blast was actually a term coined for him after his powers were retconned. Originally, Scott's powers were explained in that his eyes absorbed energy from the sun and that solar energy was actually what created the blast. Hot solar energy. The only thing that could contain this solar energy was ruby quartz. This meant that his powers could be depleted and would sometimes need to be recharged. At one point he even managed to harness lunar energy to use instead, although lunar energy wasn't shown to be quite as effective, not quite as powerful. However, a lot of fellow comic book nerds had some questions regarding Cyclops' powers in terms of how they were supposed to work, and the source for his main ability was changed. Now his eyes would be known as portals to another dimension, overflowing with energy, where the logic of our world's physics did not apply. This made his powers appear more versatile, more limitless, and allowed writers more creative license with them. It also appeased fans, so just kinda weird. I love that like we think that that makes more sense. Oh, they're a portal to another dimension. No, yeah, that's fine, that's fine. Number 7. Visor. Okay, so we all know that Cyclops has a visor, and that his visor helps him flip the switch for his optic blasts. But what you might not know is that when he fires blasts in the comics and you see him clenching his fists, that's not just a flair for the dramatic. That fist clenching also has to do with controlling his powers. Say what? It's true. The controls for his visor are actually inside his gloves. They're comprised of a series of small buttons sensitive to pressure, allowing him to change the size of the opening in the visor and have very precise control over how much damage he wants to inflict, as well as where he wants to target that damage too. This may sound like a silly place to put said buttons. What if you accidentally clenched your fist in frustration? Until you realize this also gives Scott access to his powers even when restrained. Also means he can just take off his gloves and go to sleep with his visor on. So pretty cool. Tie his hands, he can still use them. Put him to bed, he just takes off his gloves. Useless. Number 6. Superior DNA. Despite having siblings who appear more powerful than him, Mr. Sinister has always had and continues to have an obsession with Scott Summers. Why? Well, he's also obsessed with the whole Summers line, of course, but according to him, Scott is the genetic key to creating the most powerful mutant of all time. This is due to his superior DNA. But what does that mean? Well, I don't know exactly. I'm still waiting for Mr. Sinister's TED Talk on mutant DNA to help explain this whole thing in layman's terms. But for now, we just have to trust the villainous geneticist on this. I mean, I doubt he would have manipulated Scott's entire life on the scale that he has without facts to back up his claim. So he just has superior DNA. He just has it. Some people, they're just born with it. Some people, it's Maybelline. Number 5. Telepathic defense. While we're not always aware of this power for a multitude of heroes, I feel like it has become a secret must-have if you just want to be part of the X-Men team. Everyone on the X-Men seems to just have it without our knowledge until it just randomly comes up in the comics. But I guess that's what happens when you work alongside and fight against so many powerful telepaths. Actually, this ability was harnessed and strengthened by Scott through rigorous training with Professor Charles Xavier, and through his close connection to one of the strongest telepaths in the Marvel Universe, Jean Grey, and later his relationship with another accomplished telepath, Emma Frost. Although his telepathic defense didn't protect him from having Jean uncover his psychic affair with Emma Frost. So yeah. Ooh. Feel like that would have been a good time to flex that defense. Feel like, ooh, don't find out. Oh well, she would have found out anyways. He would have told her because he loves her. Number 4. Super Trigonometry. Due to his danger room training, Cyclops is insanely skilled when it comes to his optic blasts. I'm sure it's hard enough to just aim using your eyes, as I don't think it would actually be as intuitive as we all think. And even the flick of your eyes to a different direction mid-battle could mess with where you are targeting. You'd also have to be quite focused. Scott is not only skilled when it comes to targeting with his blasts in general, but he can also bounce his optic blast off surfaces, knowing which angles to approach in order to bounce the blast around in a less direct manner, avoiding obstacles and catching his opponents unawares. And in fact, firing his optic blast in a specific direction also requires a lot of control with his visor, as his eyes don't really allow him to focus a blast. It's often depicted that his visor is actually more where specific targeting comes in. I think he's got like panels that allow him to like adjust the angle. Part of this skill is practicality, and part of it is mind math, known as his super trigonometry skills. You do not want to play pool with Cyclops if he's using his blast. He will beat you. He will definitely beat you. Ooh, Hawkeye versus Cyclops in pool, who would win? These are the questions. Number 3. Black Vortex. The Black Vortex is a construct that allows those who possess it to unleash their full cosmic potential. In Cyclops Volume 3, a younger version of Cyclops from the past was working with his dad Corsair and the Starjammers, who were actually tracking the Black Vortex, and Cyclops ended up being imbued by its energy after he and his teammates, young Iceman and Groot, became trapped on the ship where the Vortex was and had to fight their way out. They all decided to submit to the Vortex, and in so doing were granted its cosmic power, becoming the most powerful versions of themselves. Cyclops himself had an awesome suit that appeared to allow him to channel his blast through his eyes, his head, his neck, and his chest. And instead of his visor, he's actually wearing a mask, implying that he has more control over his blast ability. Also, Iceman looks like an ice elf, and it's like super cute and awesome. I just love a good ice elf. Also that hair, he has such nice long hair. Elves are so cute. Number 2. Breaks adamantium. During the Age of Apocalypse storyline, Cyclops and Wolverine end up on opposite sides of the battle. Cyclops found himself temporarily allied with Apocalypse, and although in falling for the rebel and prisoner Jean Grey felt like he might be switching sides, this all ended up happening not quite fast enough. He came to blows with Logan, known as Weapon X in this alternate timeline, who showed up and fought to free Jean by himself. Unsurprisingly, once again, even in this alternate timeline, Jean was a huge part of these two's dislike for one another, and without the mutual cause of Xavier and the X-Men to unite them, their fight became a brutal one. Cyclops lost an eye and proved the power of his blast when he ended up breaking through Logan's adamantium-coated skeleton, severing his hand. Was it the left hand or the right hand? I feel like in comics, I feel like it was the left hand, but That's some real trivia for you. Tell me which hand it was. Number 1. Spirit Bomb. What's better than optic blasts? Happiness blasts! Yep, Scott one time used his power to channel happy thoughts through his eyeballs in order to stop an alien invasion, with a little help of course from his friends. This was back in the 70s in Volume 1 of Uncanny X-Men. Of course it's from the 70s. A race of aliens known as the Xenox threatened to destroy the Earth using the proximity of their piloted homeworld's gravity, but they had one huge weakness: their fear of positive emotions. Meaning that when Charles Xavier channeled all of Earth's positive thoughts and passed them telepathically onto Jean, who in turn passed them on to Alex Summers, who boosted them with cosmic rays, and passed them on to Cyclops, whose eyes they came out of in a beam of hot and awesome intensity, which was then cooled somewhat by Iceman as the beam made its way straight to the Xenox, the invaders were successfully scared off, defeated. Man, that's a lot of passing. That's like, these guys should play like sports more, I think. They'd be so good at it. And that's how Cyclops' spirit bomb ability saved the planet. Sure, he needed help, but geez, what a plot. So yeah, he can use his eyes to channel other things sometimes. Fun fact. Thanks for watching, Nerd Squad. I hope you learned something new about Scott Summers, one of the most iconic X-Men, for good or for bad. Regardless of your opinion of his character, he really is one of the central players when it comes to the X-Men team and many of their storylines. Who is your favorite X-Men? What are some of your favorite Cyclops moments, skills, or powers? Let us know in the comments below. And speaking of comments, it's time to turn to some comments from one of our latest videos, Top 10 Superheroes Who Got Cursed. Loay Previs comments, amazing how Amanda's clothes and makeup match the topic of this video. Did someone curse her? Haha, I mean, if that is a curse, that is one that I would like. I will take that curse. I love matching my videos. When I know in advance what I'll be writing and filming for the day, I will say I do like to try to dress for the occasion when I can, though it isn't always possible. Otherwise, I'd be wearing my Cyclops cosplay today. Nars Del Rosario says, loved the Monty Python Holy Grail reference. Stay nerdy, Amanda. Yay, glad you both caught and enjoyed that little Easter egg. I do love me some Monty Python. What is the airspeed velocity of an unladen swallow? And that's all the time we have for comments today. For a chance to have your words featured in a future video, be sure to comment below. And if you are new and you like what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, be sure to click that subscribe. This has been Top 10 Nerd and I'm your host Amanda McKnight. You stay nerdy, YouTube. Monty Python. Watching too much Crown right now, sorry guys. Oh, for bad or for worse, either way he sucks. This is such a ridiculous story. I feel like I said that thing weird. Did I say this thing weird? I modified the recipe a little bit to make them more minty because I wanted them to be more like holiday-y.
Yeah, it tasted them, that's good.
Yeah. The other heroes might deem, what was that?